Well, hello everybody and welcome to another session of the Magic Master Summit. My name is David Da Vinci, and with us today is Ken Weber, who wrote the book Maximum Entertainment, which is one of the reasons that you see the background behind me. He's been a huge reason for some of my success in scripting and creating and enhancing my show, which has led me to performing on cruise ships, which is why I'm actually recording this one from Cozumel, Mexico. So Ken, welcome to the show today.
So let me get this straight. I helped you get to down there. I'm stuck here in New York, and it's about 30 degrees. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you, man.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on here because I think a lot of people are going to benefit from the material that you've presented. Now, you are a wealth asset manager, correct?
Right. I'm calling you from the offices of Weber Asset Management right now.
Now, so people are probably wondering, okay, what are you doing having an asset manager come in and be on this like entertainment seminar?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll start diving in.
I had two hobbies growing up, two passions growing up since I was like 11, 12 years old. One was magic, and the other was the stock market, believe it or not. And I have been very lucky in my life. I've made world-class careers, knock on wood, out of both my passions. I was a full-time entertainer after I finished graduate school. For about 15, 17 years, I was a full-time hypnotist mentalist. Never planned to retire from show business, but I started a newsletter to help people not get screwed by stockbrokers. I thought it would just be a part-time hobby for me. It just kept growing and growing. And next thing you know, I'm running hundreds of millions of dollars for other people. But I still have my passion that never left me. And while I was working at Weber Asset is when I wrote Maximum Entertainment. Spent
Awesome.
2 years writing it.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, those are the people that are watching this that have already read your book and know that it's a great book. And I want to also add that every time I go on a contract, almost every contract, I end up buying extra copies of your book and handing them out to other entertainers on the ships. And my copy, I keep buying additional copies for myself. It's one that I read almost every single contract, and I re-highlight everything, and I go through and I tweak certain things in my show. And one of the big steps, we'll kind of go through some of this as we get on with the rest of this interview, is scripting your show is huge for me. So we'll dive into that really deep later on. But basically, your book is director's notes for magicians. So why is it that you felt that magicians need director's notes? Why do they need your book?
Let's talk about how the book came to be, because I think that will answer your question. As I mentioned, I was a full-time mentalist for many years, and my favorite group that I belonged to was the Psychic Entertainers Association, the PEA. And after having gone to their conventions, their annual conventions, where professionals perform, I realized I could stand in the back and heckle and make snide comments to my friends, or I could do something useful. And so instead of just talking amongst ourselves, I said, I have ideas about how people can be better. They may be right, they may be wrong, but instead of just sharing it with myself or one or two people, if I get up at the end of a conference and do a little critique of all the performers who appeared at the conference, that could be useful. When I first broached the subject, they said, no, you can't do that. These guys are pros. They don't want that. And as it turned out, the only real criticism I got after I ended that first 1 hour session in front of the entire convention, which is about 150 people, to a standing ovation, which blew me away. I was just thrilled. And the only criticisms I got were, Ken, you didn't spend enough time talking about me. So I knew I was onto something. People wanted advice, but they wanted it if it's done the correct way, which is to be very specific about do this, don't do that.
Well, and we've interviewed a lot of millionaires through other businesses that I have, and one of the key things that a lot of them have is they all have a mentor or somebody who helps guide them. And so I think with magic, we're almost all self-taught. We have some mentors, but we're essentially self-taught, and we kind of fail to realize. I think a lot of magicians plateau because they stop seeking outside help. And they kind of hit their own peak of where they can get on their own. But then in like my own career, when I've started applying the advice you've given in your book, as well as hiring choreographers or hiring illusion designers or set designers, my show all of a sudden started to just take off to new levels. And that's what I want people to do is be able to watch this and see this and be able to take their shows to another level. And so I think what you're saying is definitely very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, my background, so, my 2 degrees are in drama, and my undergraduate degree, my 2-year degree from Brooklyn College was in broadcasting, but the minor there was directing. And I realized magicians, mentalists, hypnotists, we try and do it on our own, which can work, but it's so much better if you can get some good feedback. I mean, the best actors in the world work with directors, right? And so that tells us that we can't see ourselves. It's hard to see ourselves and be objective about it.
So let's talk about that for guys that are on a super tight budget and want to be able to do things on their own. One of the key techniques you talk about in your book is the importance of being videotaped. I've used this in my own career a lot. I was really fortunate in some ways. Growing up, my family went from millionaires to pretty much welfare. So they went backwards in life. And so when
Right?
Yeah. So I learned a lot of lessons from that. But one of the things I took away from that was that, well, there's a lot. I'll go off on another tangent. But one of the key things is that they never just gave me money and said, hey, go buy your show, go build your show. What they did is my dad would come to almost every single show and he would videotape the shows for me. Not only did I now have something that I could create a publicity video with, and I was getting into magic right when the first iMac was coming out, and the internet was just starting to be a thing where you could edit your own video, you could put it online. This is pre-YouTube, right? So that was really helpful to me from a marketing standpoint, but also from being able to critique my own show and make it better, because I grew up in Spokane, Washington, where there weren't a lot of magicians, and there weren't a lot of magicians doing what I was trying to achieve. So videotaping was huge to me. I'd love it if you could share some light on tips and tricks that people can use and specific things to look for when they are videotaping their act.
I would say the most important thing is don't watch it once, because the first time you watch it, you're watching it and you're saying, oh, that's great, I'm so funny, or that was terrible. You got to watch it 2 or 3 times to really get the emotions out of watching it. Did you find that to be true for yourself?
I found that to be very true, and actually I still, to this day, we just re-choreographed our fireball illusion, and afterwards you're doing one of these, you're like, yeah, I look great now, and then you watch it a couple more times, you're like, I totally screwed that up, or
Right, because, the whole book, the original title, the working title of the book, it's Maximum Entertainment, but the working title was Raise Your Level. Yeah. I'm all about, if you're down here, you got to get to here. But if you're doing the best cruise ships in the world, you still want to get to here.
Exactly.
No matter where you are, you can always get better. So you watch it the first time, you give yourself that pat on the back. But on the second or third time you watch it, you realize there's that one moment or 2 moments that could be better.
Yeah.
And when I work with some of the professionals, I mean, I literally stop them sometimes every 12 or 15 or 20 seconds. Stop. Did you mean to turn around at that exact second? Stop. Did you mean to say it exactly that way? Because frequently there's a slightly better way you can do almost anything.
Yeah, so you kind of talk about looking at the tiny details. Obviously, by this time, if you're doing it on stage, your tricks shouldn't suck, right? Like you should be already a qualified enough
Rule
person
number 1
to accept money. So assuming that's out of the way, and this whole thing is not about tricks. This whole seminar that I put together is only about increasing your level. So assuming your tricks are already good, it's about taking it to that next level. And you mentioned the cruise ship example. We live pretty much on board the Norwegian Dawn. We've been on here for like 2 years or something. And during that time, we've seen a lot of musicians come and they would fill the atrium. Now, we worked with an amazing act named Jose and Patty, and they're incredible, phenomenal. And they're a lounge act, if you will, and they play in the atrium. And they've taken their level to such a high. They had stage sets built to stand on to make them a little bit higher. They bring in their own sound equipment. They take the extra step to really make their show great. Then what happens is other acts come in and they perform in that same area, and every one of them has had complaints that, oh, the sound in here sucks. Bring your own sound equipment. Or, oh, we just really aren't high enough up. Bring your own stage set. They've provided them. They built them on the ship for you. Just put it out. Or some of the guys couldn't even fill it, and so what they would do is they would actually, instead of being up on the upper level of the atrium, they would go down to by the piano, and long story short, everybody kind of complained. And so I took a minute, actually about a month ago, and I was sitting there having lunch with my wife, and we looked over at the stage set, and we're talking about Patty and Jose as an example, and we thought, are we like Patty and Jose, or are we like the other acts that have come in? In other words, have we plateaued like, let's say, the other acts? And I'm not saying anything critical about the other acts, so just looking at the facts here. Have we kind of plateaued in our performance, or are we still continuing to try to raise that level? Like, if somebody else is coming and watching us, are they going to say we're like those other acts, or are we the Patty and Jose's of that ship? So in videotaping has been huge for that. But like you said, it's about getting those little tiny details of just even stepping slightly different, or the way your hand gesture is, or one thing that I've really found video to be great for is you might have a really funny ad-lib moment that you can later script into your show, and I'll be able to capture that and remember it, because I'm not going to remember it in the show environment necessarily, but I always can go back and watch that.
But when it happens, you always think, I'll never forget that, because that's such a great line, you will forget it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I won't say the specific trick because I'm really proud of the line, but there was a point in the show where some audience member yelled out something, and I was able to ad-lib off of that. And so then I literally went back and I wrote into my script, okay, spirit fingers. And this is part of this whole script now, that it feels impromptu when the audience does it. So the audience thinks I'm quick on my feet, but really I set that up ahead of time. And that came from videotaping. So when people are videotaping, do you suggest that somebody should have somebody always videotape their show, the quality? Do you have any concerns or thoughts about that, or a wide angle, a close angle?
Yeah, I mean, there's no set answer. I know, for example, Bill Cook. I met him at the Magic Castle, the guy from Chicago, young guy. He's dedicated to improving his act. He's a big fan of my book as well. He takes it to the extreme. I found out he sets up a GoPro over his close-ups area at the Magic Castle, and he videos every single show, and he watches the complete show. It's more important to do it than to worry about, the specifics of how you're doing it, because if you do it enough, it's going to be different every time, different venues. And so the main thing is to set it up, watch it, take your notes. Another tip, by the way, is when you watch it, definitely have that pad of paper and a pencil right there next to you, so you can really write those notes down.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. A lot of people maybe watch it while they're laying in bed waiting to go to sleep. But it needs
be doing that.
It needs to be focused calculations of your act, I believe, to add to what you're saying.
Right. So sometimes if I'm working with somebody, I insist that they have a pad and pencil right there. I said, I'm not just talking. They think as I give my suggestions that they'll remember it. You don't remember it. If there's a lot, you'll remember 2 or 3. I want you to remember all of it. You got to write it down.
And the key point, kind of the overall thing is you might want to become better for yourself, but your competitors are probably doing this as well. And so just to add to what you're saying, videotape it. And if you can't have a director, be your own director, because your competitors probably are doing the same or more than you. I mean, would you agree with that?
I'll agree with that totally. And by the way, just this morning, I came from my annual physical. Okay, now why am I bringing that up? I'm bringing that up because we need to do checkups on ourselves. So after you've done everything you can to get better and better, we fall into patterns. We become stale, or we're doing something that we've done 8 or 12 years. Well, maybe it's time to freshen it up. So after you've done something and you feel really comfortable, you still want to go back. You still want to go back and try and look at it with fresh eyes and have that yearly physical, so to speak, and say, am I still excited about this? Is my audience still excited about this as it was 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I like that. And you mentioned standing ovations earlier on and how you received a standing ovation and were surprised by it. But I think that's always been my measure of hey, was the show good enough? Did I get a standing ovation? And did they stand willingly? Because I can almost always get them to stand. And there's cheap tricks you can do that I personally discourage. But did they stand, and did they stand quickly and out of their, even though subconsciously you're telling them the whole show to stand, did they do it willingly? I think is a good way to do it. And this can be with close-up shows with no lights or audio, so to speak. There's just you and a deck of cards. I've had that happen, again, through using your techniques. And so that's one reason I think your book's so powerful. So let me move on a little bit here. In chapter 4, you talk about mastering your craft, communicating your humanity, capturing your environment, controlling every moment, and eliminating weak spots. So if
nice. Those are the 6 pillars of entertainment success.
Yeah, so let's try.
I brought my book here.
Yes, I love that. And I guess while we're on this, where can people purchase this? And we'll cover it again at the end. But Amazon.
It's on Amazon, which surprised me. But it's basically every major magic dealer carries it, and I think we're in our 5th printing now.
Awesome.
Which is amazing to me because unlike most guys who write magic books or put out DVDs, I don't go around doing conventions and doing lectures, right? I'm basically unknown. When my book came out, I went to Magic Live, and I literally knew 2 people there. And now when I go to any magic convention, they see my badge, and basically I'm known. But I didn't do anything to help spur sales, and we're in our 5th printing of like 1,000 or 2,000 each printing.
Well, you say you
So I'm
didn't do
very
anything, but you put out
happy.
some of the best content and things that people needed. And I would compare, like, when I was growing up, Showmanship for Magicians was kind of this book that everybody was recommended. But now I think you crushed it. You took that to a whole nother level and really made it what people need to hear.
Well, thank you for saying that, and that's important. Those older books were great books, but the difference is I'm a contemporary. They're really from the 1920s, 1930s. Here I was, a full-time professional entertainer, much more recently, and I was taking my experience of making a very good living as an entertainer and using that lens to write the book.
Perfect. So one of the things that I found that has helped me get standing ovations is sharing a piece of my life with the audience. And I found that if they like you as a person, and as a performer, but if they like you as a person behind the performance, they're more likely to be with you if there's a mistake. They're going to also be with you at that end when you get that final chance. Did they like me? Are they going to stand? Can you share some thoughts on, one, do you agree with me? And two, what are some ways that people can help share their humanity?
Well, I agree with you because that is a part of the book. My 6 pillars of entertainment success, which is towards the front of the book, communicate your humanity. If you're just this guy doing things up there, you can be good or less good. But if you're a guy doing great things and we feel some sort of human connection, it's always better. Let me give you one little tip that I discovered late in my career. It may not apply to someone like you in your situation, but I've really discovered it more and more as I've talked to other people, because it comes up, should I meet the audience before the show? I never used to in my own life. I'm the performer. I want to walk out. That's the first time they see me. Yeah, that makes sense. But you know what? If you hang out with people beforehand, before the show, if you're walking around the ship and you say, hi, I'm Dave, I'll be doing a show later, I really hope you'll come and enjoy it. That goes a long way to getting those folks on your side. I don't know if you do that now.
Well, it's kind of, with the way the ship works for me, and I agree with what you're saying, we do a welcome aboard spot, which we are trying to make as good as we can. And we actually use that spot to test things to then later put into our show, and we can really refine them because we focus on just that one act for that one day. It's not trying to do the whole show at the same time. It's just literally 4 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever that segment is. And so that allows us to first get our foot out there because the people just came on the ship. But then, because they have known me at that point, when I walk around the ship, they now know me and feel comfortable to come up and talk about, when's your
Exactly.
next show? And so there's a lot of
And
opportunities
you feel a
for that.
difference, right?
Oh, huge
You feel
difference.
a difference. Yeah. So that's a little tip that I've been telling some of the people that I work with. Don't be hesitant to mingle before, if it's a corporate gig, whatever kind of gig it is, a college
That's great
performance.
advice.
Yeah, and I discovered that later and too late in my career. I wish I had discovered it sooner.
Well, and it's kind of a show hack in a sense that if your audience knows you and likes you before you do the show, you've already achieved what I'm talking about trying to achieve in your show. You've already done it off
Right.
stage, so of course they're going to
Right.
like you. Like when I was
Right.
in high school, I'd rent a local theater once a year, and I'd put on my own hour and a half show with intermission and all this stuff. And I learned a lot from that, but one of the things I really learned was that I always got a standing ovation because it was all my friends and friends of friends. And so you had a few people stand, then everybody would stand, which was good and bad. It was great for demo videos, but it was also bad in the sense that it was too easy to get a standing ovation because everybody knew me and everybody that was there liked me already. I didn't have to earn anything. I just had to go out and do my craft, and they already liked me. But that comes back to communicate your humanity. These people are there because they liked me, where in a ship environment, they're there because they paid to be entertained. And some of them sit like this. They're like, yeah, entertain me, Magic Boy. And it's a very
Right.
they've seen magicians on other, and I hate to hear this, but I hear it every single day, every single week, every single month
What?
of my time out at sea. They've been on another ship, they saw another magician, and they thought they hated magic. And this is not a pat on my back. This is a punch in the face to the magic community, that there's a lot of people out there that aren't doing it properly, and they haven't mastered their craft, and they're bad, and it sucks to see that because that ultimately hurts the entire magic community. But you need to be likable, and
Yeah, but you're touching on one of the key points for me, and something I really talk about is because we are such a small niche of the entertainment world. If you see a bad singer, you don't say, "I'll never book a singer. I don't like singers." There are a lot of good singers out there. You see one bad magic act, it hurts everybody. You know, so that's really important. Let's just touch a little bit more on communicating your humanity, because I know a bunch of people have read the book and have taken that advice. It can be as simple as saying, "I'm from Seattle, Washington, but I went to school in Detroit." Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just try and, I went to school there, or I know people from there, or my wife is from there, or something. Don't be overtly artificial about it, but just something that they can hang some sort of connection on, and suddenly you're not just Magic Boy across the proscenium, through the proscenium arch over there.
I like that. Let's touch too on a few techniques that people can use that are good, as well as a few techniques that are overdone or just cheesy. You mentioned it's as easy as saying, "Hey, I'm from Seattle." I found that in my close-up show, I was asked to do the close-up show because they needed extra material. Now it's a full-on matinee show, and we fill 1,200 seats, and it kills, which I'm shocked and kind of pissed off about, because I spent my whole career carting around 2 tons of equipment and 10 birds and people, and then I go out with a deck of cards and I get the same reaction. But in that show, using some of your tips, I mentioned things that are likable and relatable. Like, I grew up in Spokane. I first got my career started at a place called Red Robin. Has anybody heard of it? Now all of a sudden they're relating to me because they ate at a Red Robin last week, or they have hopefully had a good experience at a Red Robin restaurant. And trying to do things like that, as well as there's a lot of little subtleties. Is there anything that you can share that comes to mind as far as outside of, say, "Hey, I'm from Seattle"? What else could somebody do that would be kind of a quick thing to help get people on their side?
I would be hesitant to be too specific, but I'll tell you some of the things that, when we talk about cheesy, some people have read the book, maybe they have or haven't, but they want to tell about themselves, and they go overboard. They tell too much. One of the things I really don't like, and I think I do mention this in the book, to say, "My mentor was a guy named Joe Berg, and he was from Chicago," and we don't care about that. Sometimes you tell too much, and if you say, "This is the first trick I ever learned," I think that's the worst thing to say. A lot of magicians do it. Why do we want to see the first trick you ever learned? We want to see what's great, what you've perfected over the course of a lifetime. That's new, that's fresh. So those are the kinds of things that bother me a little bit. And you don't want to sound too rehearsed when you start giving a little bio. It should really feel organic. And this, I can't get too specific because everybody's going to be different about it, but this is where the videotape comes in. Maybe even getting 1 or 2 trusted friends to watch and say, "Did that feel normal or natural, or did it feel like I was forcing it?" You got to get some good feedback on that.
So sorry, we lost your feed just coming back here. One of the things that I see done poorly, I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done really, really poorly, and I've seen it done more poorly than I've seen it done right, and that's the snowstorm, where everyone's
Right.
like, "Oh, I the first time I saw snow," I think I would just share that as an example of one of those things that people have done too much, and maybe need to try to reel that in or find their own way of doing it. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree. First of all, you can't say 110%. 100% is the max. But if I could agree 110%, I would. It's really wrong to say, David Copperfield did it, and what's his name? Who's the other guy who does the James?
Kevin James?
You know what I'm talking about. Kevin James. He does, I think he invented it. But come on, it's really become a cliche. You can't say things that other people are out there doing. It's just wrong. And again, if a person sees 2 magicians within a 3-year period and they both say that, it ruins it for everybody. Don't you think?
I agree 100%. And that's one thing that I've really tried to do in my shows here. And I'll talk here while we just lost your feed. Hopefully your video comes back.
Okay.
But in my shows too, I've done a lot of effort trying to make sure that that my material is different from somebody else's. And so part of that is I don't do the snowstorm. We do have snow in our show, but it's a totally different, I don't talk about it being a snowstorm. I don't even mention it. It just kind of happens in the background as an added effect, as a theatrical effect. But that's the only comparison you can say, oh, I saw, Kevin James and he had snow and you had snow, so you're the same. No, it's like, it's totally different.
Right.
So let's move on a little bit. Eliminating weak spots.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on that, it's not only the trick, it's not only the framing of the effect, but it's simple words that you say. I mean, if you obviously don't want to say, I have here an ordinary deck. That should go without saying that's an ordinary deck. But even saying things like, now for the first time. A lot of guys say, now for the first time. Don't say what the other guy is saying. Again, when you videotape and you're trying to raise your level, it's everything you do or say. Try to make it not like the other guy.
Like every escape shouldn't be about Houdini.
Right. Because you don't know if there's an agent in the audience. You don't know if there's a corporate booker in the audience. Mm-hmm. And if they have seen one or two or three guys and, a few things sound familiar, that hurts you.
Yeah.
So don't be doing that. Try and make everything you do or say original with you. I know it's not easy, but you can do it with some thought.
Even if you're doing the same tricks, you can still present it differently, like you're saying, with proper scripting.
Right.
So let's go over to eliminating weak spots. This is something else you talked about in chapter 4 of your book. And basically, I don't want to give away too much of your book, but the speed in which you speak, the building to a climax. Can you share some common things that people do that are weak spots and methods that they can do to help eliminate that?
This is where either having that trusted friend in the audience or the videotaping is critical. You can't, some people can, but mostly we can't feel what the slow spots are. Because when we're up on stage, we're talking, we're remembering what the next line is, or what the next effect is, or where the steel comes, or where what the climax is building to. We're not out there in the audience. We're not feeling the pace slow down. So you really do need to sit critically and watch those videotapes, or have that director, have that trusted friend out there with a notepad saying, about 12 minutes in, you were talking, and you talked probably a minute longer than you needed to, and I could feel the people around me were losing interest, losing focus. And, I can only be general here. I can't be specific. Obviously, when I work with people, I get very specific, but everybody has them. Any performer, comedian, when we start out developing new routines, we're going to have slow spots, we're going to have weak spots, but you just want to make sure one moment flows into the next as organically as possible. But you got to be objective. You have to look at yourself on video, or you have to have that trusted friend or two really being honest with you.
And I want to add to that too, because I think that's great advice. But adding the transitions between tricks, I think, is a spot where a lot of people have their show come to a halt, and it really slows down when they're doing transitions. And that's something that I've been focusing on the last year and a half or so, is making those transitions not stop. And I've been part of bigger production shows, like when we toured with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. There was no transitions. Everything just was constant. And so in a show, when it's just you, or maybe you and an assistant or two, it's difficult to find ways to make things transition smoothly. And so I think that's important. And then scaling it down to a smaller show, and I think it leads us hopefully to the next point.
Every show, transitions can be a very big weak spot for many performers. You put one prop away, and let's see, and you look around for the other prop. You can't be doing that. One of the other key points I bring out is control every moment. Well, every moment means every moment. Not just the moments when you're doing the trick, but in between. You have to maintain control of the audience when you finish and you transition to the next thing. You can't have a dead space right there.
Do you have any suggestions for people of how they maintain that control so there isn't a dead space?
Again, it's going to be different for everybody, because obviously a show with music, the music can help carry you through, but you just want to you have to script it. I mean, the real trick to it is you've got to sit down and think about, what am I going to say when I put the Dove box away and I pick up the Hippity Hop Rabbit? So whatever it's going to be, you have to think about, what am I going to do when I finish that and go to this? So if you haven't thought about it, you're probably going to have a weak spot. So you actually have to take out pencil and paper or your computer screen or your iPad and write down a sentence or two about what you're doing for those 5 seconds, those 7 seconds. It can't just be looking for your prop.
It's great
It
advice.
can't just be putting that down and now walking over to the other side of the other table. You've got to figure out, how does that seem smooth? How does it seem organic for me to be doing this and now I'm doing that? In the best shows, you never feel there's a transition. It just is one smooth moment to moment, and the attention never flags, never lags. We never feel there's a moment we can turn away because something is always happening. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to give it thought.
I think that's great. And if somebody's watching a Broadway show, that was scripted. If somebody's watching a TV show, that was scripted. If somebody's watching a stand-up comedian, those are bits that are scripted. So why should magic be any different? It needs to be scripted.
Exactly right.
Which is where I was hoping to go next, because scripting my show was when I started to all of a sudden really develop. And I learned it really when we were producing the show with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. I got to help be part of their script writing process for our 2-year tour. And throughout that process, I looked at their show, and there's no way you would think they script it, because you're just hiring a bunch of acts, you're pooling them together, and you just bring one act and then the other. But it was not the case. I mean, this was like a 30-page script that I realized, all the professional shows, every professional show scripts their show. It's no big trade secrets. It's just what people do. And I have talked with a few of my friends about this, and even just after I read your book, I went through and I scripted every single word, and then beyond that, I went and I scripted every action that was happening during the word. So let's say that it was a manipulation act to music. The bird appears, and then I get rid of the sketch pad. No, I hand the sketch pad to my wife with my right hand while I grab the bird with my left hand. She removes, and in that process, we cleaned up so much of the show. Like, we were saying, okay, she exits stage right. And then I said, well, why the hell does she exit stage right when it makes more sense for her to exit stage left? She can use that opportunity for this. And it was a huge benefit for me. I could go on and on about that, but if you could share some tips on it.
Let me interrupt you. Let me talk. I get a lot of pushback on this. And as I think I mentioned in the book, I didn't want to sit down and write down with that kind of specificity, that you just mentioned. But because I say it will sound stilted, it will sound too rehearsed. I want it to sound of the moment, spontaneous. That's what a lot of people will say to me. Yeah, that's great. Still write it down, because once you have the script written and you learn the script, then you are free. Then you are free to leave the script, because the script is there. You come back when you need to. But by doing the hard work up front, it eliminates, they say you need 10,000 hours of flight time doing a trick before you really have it down. May or may not be true. But you really cut out a lot of the negative, the bad negative of learning, of developing a routine. If you do it ahead of time, if you sit down and get as much as you can down on paper, down on your computer screen, so that you can have confidence that I've thought this through. And so when you do your ad lib or something goes wrong, you can go back to the script that you have locked away up in your head. It's a feeling of confidence that you need.
Yeah, a total show hack in the sense that you can get the practice out of the way just through scripting it. You can get a lot of those mistakes out ahead of time. Another thing I want to add to that too, for people that maybe don't feel that they need a script, we do a question and answer. We did a question and answer bird training seminar, because we have 9 parrots that we travel with internationally, and that brings up.
By the way, to a mentalist, the word question and answer is a whole different meaning, but I know what you mean. Okay.
So
Q&A.
So we do a Q&A. We do an interaction thing with the audience where we talk about the bird training, and they ask questions. And you would think that type of thing you would get different questions all the time, but what we found, people would always ask at least 5 of the questions that we had already heard before. So what we started to do is create routines based around what those questions were. So now we had scripted answers that my wife and I would do back and forth that were very funny. and they felt impromptu. And again, it increased that likability, so that when we did our main show at the end of the week, like maybe they already saw something out, like the way it is on the ship, it's always different, but if they saw us again later in the week, they already loved us because they had this spontaneity, or what they felt was spontaneous. They thought we were better entertainers, but really it was the same question 14 other people had asked the week before, and so we had a script and a routine for it. So adding to what you said, I encourage people that have sort of that objection of first saying like, well, I wouldn't script my show because everything's ad lib. You're going to get a lot of the same opportunities, and to take those opportunities and script around, at this point, this or this would happen. So create scripts around those things. And it's one of the tips that some of the best public speakers use as well.
Yep, exactly. And as you develop your act, it becomes, if you're good at developing it, it becomes more and more natural. So even though there is a script that you're working off of, you learn how to make it feel more natural, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know we're getting a little bit close to wrapping up here, so I want to try to go through a few things as well.
Let me just throw in one thing.
Sure.
I've noticed sometimes professionals don't buy the book, although I've gotten rave reviews from professionals around the world who do, I'm happy to say, love the book. But I just want to point out, I spent 2 years writing the book and really researching it beyond my own preconceived notions of what should be in the book. I went to see a lot of live performances and watched a lot of DVDs of performances. I only went to see professionals.
Yeah.
So everything in the book, every single thing in the book, I never went to a Magic Club meeting. I haven't been to a Magic Club meeting in like 40 years. Everything in the book is from watching professional performers,
That's
the
important.
mistakes they make.
Yeah.
So that is important for people to realize.
So what you're really saying is that the professionals are the ones that don't think they need it, but they're the ones that actually need it the most.
Many professionals know they need it. I love when a professional says, Ken, I want to work with you, and I want you to not hold back. And that's when I know I can deal with that person.
Well, I think you and I are going to have that discussion very soon, because I'm at the point now where I want more feedback on my show. So we'll have that discussion on another day. But my final thought on my side.
This is not meant to be a sales call or talk in
Yeah.
any way. I'm really quite busy, but that's fine.
Perfect.
Whatever works for you.
Well, my final thought on the script writing on my side, if you have anything else you want to add, please do. But one last benefit that I found from scripting my entire show is I now had an entire sheet. It was like a 30-page document that is a living, breathing document. As my show changes, my script would change. But more importantly, in my professional environment that I am working in, we have different entertainment production managers come on board to run our show. Just recently, we had David Copperfield's personal assistant from before come on, and she had to immediately run my show. She just went straight through my script, read every single piece as I did it. If I went off script, she knew I was coming right back, and then she waited, and then she knew what cue to call. We were able to do the show flawlessly because she was able to go through my script. We didn't even have to rehearse it because she just simply followed along as if she was reading the book and then hit go, and that was it. I'm able to add those cues and those scripts and the call signs for audio and technical and all of that stuff into that script, so that anybody, and she just left, we have somebody else who this is her first contract. The show went flawlessly because of it doesn't matter their experience level, they're able to look at that script and be able to just run the show off of it.
I'm going to interrupt and say, this is amazing for me to hear, because honestly, my background is very different from what you do. I always thought the book in general was for people like me who stood in front of an audience with a microphone, handheld if possible, and talk mostly. And people like the late and great Joni Spina would work with people like you, the big production acts with music and dance movements, illusions. I felt that was not really who I'm speaking to. So for me to hear someone like you, because I did a little research on you before, we don't really know each other.
No, we don't.
But I did some research on your show, and your show is not who I was talking to. So
Interesting.
Or I didn't think I was talking to. And so for me to hear that is extremely gratifying. Thank you.
Well, cool. No, thank you. And to add to that, the book, one of the people I just recently gave it to is an act called Fly Adage, and they aren't even a magic act. They're an acrobat duo, where normally you see an acrobat, they do lifts or whatever, and it's a 5 to 7 minute act. Well, on Norwegian Cruise Lines, they hire those people to do a 40-minute show, and that act read your book, and they're from France, so they took even more time to just really translate it in their own minds and highlight my book to heck as well. and they were able to take that and improve their show even more. And from that, they were also able to then look at my show, because we're both looking at each other's shows throughout the week, and they were able to help me as an outside director based on your tips and your advice. And so it's been an all-consuming great asset for everybody. So thank you on that.
Thank you. And the greatest honor I've received is when the Magic Circle did a survey of 5-foot shelf magic books. 28 titles made it all time, and I was listed there. I'm little Ken Weber from Flushing, New York. I didn't know anybody. I was on a high when that came out.
Very cool.
I'm still, as I say, I'm running a business here, but to know that the work I did is helping people is just incredibly gratifying. So I really thank you for everything you've said and let me say here today.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, my computer is at 5% battery, even though it started full, and I am running this remotely. I've got my remote lights and everything, but it is also just time-wise about time to wrap up here. Is there any closing thoughts you want to have on anything else in your book that we didn't talk about? You have costuming, you talk about speaking, sound systems, dealing with spectators, positioning spectators, opening your show, closing your show. You have so much in your book, and I'm plugging it for you because I think everybody needs your book. But is there anything else that you want to mention that we haven't got to cover yet?
The main thing I would say is wherever you are, as I said, the working title was Raise Your Level. When you walk out in front of an audience as a performer, anybody walks out as a magician, mentalist, you're doing something that most people in the audience have not seen before. So you represent all of us. I'm talking to you out there who's listening to this. You represent everybody. You represent Dave, you represent Ken, you represent all of us. You've got to do the best job you can. So you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your audience, and you owe it to the art form to raise your level to be the best you can.
I think
that's what I would say.
Incredibly wise words, Ken. I appreciate that. And we're going to close your session like we close everybody else's here. What's one action step that people can take this week to be able to raise their show to that next level?
That's tough. I would just say start putting ideas down on paper about how you can be better. Just say, what's my weak spot? What can I work on today? Work on your slides, work on your technique, but you got to work on the entertainment part of your show, because it's show business, and you've got to, there's the business side that you know all about, but you've got to work on the show. The show has to be a complete show from the moment you're introduced to the moment you say thank you and good night. Everything has to be as good as you can possibly make it.
Well said. Ken, where can people find out more about you and your book and be able to get in touch with you if they need to?
All they're going to do is get the book, which is available through any magic shop. Maximum Entertainment. Director's notes from Magicians and Mentalists. I think this may be the last printing that's out there, so there's probably only a couple of hundred books out there for sale at this point. Perfect.
Well, I might end up carrying it on our site here in the future because it's something I love and I think everybody needs. But Ken, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and hopefully the information you've shared here today will help a lot of other acts because, worst case, I know it just helped me. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Dave, this has been fun. Thank you so much.